Autism is on the rise. As you can see, in 1995, the incidence of autism was 1 out of 1,000 kids. In 2016, it rose to 1 out of 54 children. And this is a study from 2018 in the US. The overall ASD, meaning autism, prevalence was 23 per 1,000 children, 1 in 44 children. What's going on? They tell us it's genetic. But do genes really change in just 25 years? Today, we'll talk about the gut microbiome and our children's health. And I'll tell you how they work for your child to be the most successful and the best they can be. And I'll even incorporate a free guide for practical thing you can do today at home with low budget to help your child's microbiome. Let's start. Welcome to the Wellness Messiah podcast. I'm your host, Rimon. You're a loving parent, a responsible parent, and you want to do the best for your children. And the best gift for our children is a fully developed, healthy body and brain. The brains of our children will affect their future, learning abilities or disabilities, IQ, and EQ, emotional intelligence. All of these are going to be affected by the brains of our children. And the first 5 years are the most crucial time. As you can see, by the time our children become 5, 90% of their brain volume is developed. So these 5 years, together with the time in the womb, are the most critical time in the development of the brain of our children. Brain development and gut microbiome. What is the gut microbiome? It is the collective microorganisms in the digestive system, specifically in our child's, but also ours as well. 100 trillion of them, mostly bacteria, are sitting on the walls of the gut. They weigh 3 pounds. Heavy. If you're losing weight after taking antibiotics, now you know what you have lost. And we carry those microorganisms everywhere we go. We just like a large containers of microorganisms and bacteria. Challenge 1, antibiotics. Antibiotics can save the baby's life when threatened by harmful bacteria. However, these antibiotics, they do come with a cost because they are non-specific, which means they kill the good microbiome together with the bad bugs we're targeting. This is really important. We don't have technology to target only the bad bugs, so we also kill the good bacteria, the microbiome. And most importantly, these antibiotics could affect the microbiome of babies. This is a study in 2021 from New York University. This is what they found. Antibiotics near pregnancy had a negative impact on critical neurological development in babies, in mice. Now, near pregnancy means before the mother becomes pregnant, or when you give antibiotics for a child after they are born as babies. And the brains of the babies didn't develop to the maximum potential in those instances. This is a study I'm quoting. There are also substantial effects on frontal cortex and amygdala gene expression by bioinformatic interrogation affecting multiple pathways underlying neurodevelopment, which means that both emotional development and cognitive development got hurt in those babies. So both IQ and EQ got hurt in this instance. The negative impact of our babies' brains took place too when antibiotics were given to mothers before pregnancy. As I said, it's not just when you give it to the baby, because the mother, they bequeath their good bacteria, their microbiome to the child when it's born. So this antibiotics effect also relevant for the mothers who plan to have a baby. The baby inherits a damaged microbiome from the mother at birth if the mother took too many antibiotics. That seems very confusing to me at first. Why would the microbiome, a bunch of bacteria, yeast, and other microorganisms, would affect the brain development of human babies? Professor Martin Blazer had been researching gut microbiome for 50 years. He explained this connection. I'm quoting him. First, the microbiome produces molecules important in metabolism, which is also brain metabolism. In other words, the metabolic molecules those microbiomes produces also get to the brain, and the brain uses them to grow and develop. Second, the microbiome transfers the gut chemical and physical messages. This causes the gut to produce molecules of different neurotransmitters that transmit messages in our nervous system. And there is a direct nerve, the vagus nerve, between the gut and the brain. So we have to remember that there is a direct road directly communicating between the gut and the brain. And the gut has a major impact on the communication that goes in the brain. And this communication is really relevant in the brain development, because remember, all development, all growth begins with communication in the body. And now you can see there is a connection, the growth of the brain coming from the gut. And we know who sits in the gut, which is the microbiome. And 80% of serotonin, this is a quote from him, 80% of serotonin comes from the gut. And studies have shown that the gut produces or does not produce serotonin according to the messages they receive from the gut. So again, think about this. 80% of serotonin comes from the gut. This is a tremendous amount for a chemical that has such a major impact on the brain. But not only it makes us feel good, it also has to do with the brain growth. Let me show you in a second. So what do we know about serotonin and brain development? This study showed that, I'm quoting, serotonin acts as a growth factor during embryogenesis. So serotonin in essence helps the brain to grow. Thus, serotonin plays a huge role in the baby's brain development. And 80% of it coming from the gut, where its production influenced by the microbiome. This microbiome also makes vitamins the baby needs. These bacteria, they're virtually producing they give your baby daily multivitamin that helps the brain to grow. Protecting your baby together, the gut and the microbiome. The gut is the protective fence of the baby's body. The gut protects the baby from the myriad of toxins in our environment. Now, we already know that we are bombarded with toxins all the time, but the gut protects us. The baby needs the gut to protect itself also from those toxins. Which toxins are we talking about? Pesticides, heavy metals, chemicals. Pesticides in our agriculture, they work on the nervous system of insects, and we want them to stay out of the body when we eat the food. Imagine what happens when they enter the body. They target our nervous system as well. So we want to keep them away from our bodies and also the bodies of our children. And we don't want them to go to the brains of the baby, for example. And heavy metals are also potential brain toxins, only if they pass the gut, And our gut is fed by the microbiome. When the gut is not fed, the baby's defense becomes weaker. Many of these toxins can leak inside the baby's body and get inside the brain. The microbiome also protects our babies directly. The good bacteria also make sure that aggressive bugs are kept out, aggressive bacteria, yeast, and they directly eliminate toxins that could damage our baby's brain. Dr. Campbell McBride, who specialized in neurological disorders in babies and children and worked for a long time with autistic children, I'm quoting her. These good microbes have an ability to neutralize these chemicals. In fact, they are the best neutralizer and detoxifying substances on the planet known to us. Idea: let's give our babies probiotics. It's not that simple. Here is why. Musical chairs. Musical chairs. Do you know this game when we played as children? When you have empty chairs and the music played out, and when the music stops, all the kids need to take a chair, and the kid who did not take a chair was left out and couldn't sit and was out of the game. And the same game happens in the gut. Every bacteria or microorganism takes a chair inside of our gut. It sits there on the walls of the gut on this long tube and share our food as it sits there. Once a microorganism, good or bad, takes its place, it's not easy to remove it, especially if we continue to feed it. Would you give up your chair easily if you had free food? We would have to kill you first. The same with bacteria. Nature knows this very well, which is why the babies receive the mother's microbiome at birth, right before the first sip of milk. Nature wants to make sure the microbiome takes its place in the musical chairs game before every potential contamination that could enter the baby's body. Which is why the antibiotics don't harm our children directly. However, by killing the good microbiome, either of the mother or the baby, the musical chairs themselves are now up for grabs. This is why the antibiotics don't harm our children directly. However, by killing the good microbiome, their musical chairs of the good microbiome are now up for grabs. And there is a specific type of microorganism that is very happy with antibiotics. Can you guess who it is? The yeast, whom the antibiotics don't harm at all, giving them empty chairs to take. In fact, the first antibiotic, penicillin, which is a derivative we're still using today in antibiotics, was developed by the family of the yeast, the fungi, which explains why the antibiotics doesn't affect them. Nobody wants to hurt their family. And what do the yeast do and make in our gut? They make alcohol out of sugar or carbs. That's how we make beer and wine. We give the yeast carbs, for example, to produce beer, and sugar when we produce wine. This alcohol production happens in our gut too. Then you hear about syndromes like this one, drunk without drinking, a case of autobrewery syndrome. Yeast producing alcohol inside of our bodies from grains and sugar. And some people who probably have leaky gut of some sort, they get the alcohol entering their blood and they get drunk without drinking a single glass of alcohol. Imagine that. Alcohol doesn't help the baby's brain. It prevents the good bacteria from recovering after antibiotics. And we know that because we use too alcohol to kill or slow down the growth of bacteria. In addition, alcohol is a neurotoxin. It hurts the brain development of the baby, which is why we don't want to drink alcohol during pregnancy. Now, without the good microbiome suppressed by the yeast, other bad germs can join the party, and they love sugar too. Let's talk about mind control. Have you found it difficult to control the diet of your child? What about your diet? These bad germs and yeast sitting in the gut make our children crave sweets, bread, and grains, which they, the yeast and the germs, really love to eat. They sit on the chair waiting to be served. This is a study that shows that, I'm quoting, early life influence can prime the infant gut microbiome and brain for food addiction, which might be further reinforced by increased antibiotic usage and dietary patterns throughout adulthood. So they sit on the gut and they control the addictions of our children. So if you wonder why your child is attracted to food that are not healthy for them, not nourishing for them, now you know why. So after taking antibiotics, our children's diet, and the mother's diet as well, exacerbate this cycle and make sure the microbiome won't be able to recover from the antibiotics. This is what happens. Antibiotics kill the good bacteria but not the yeast, and they also open the door for the musical chairs for other bad bacteria. Yeasts take their seat in the musical chairs and produce alcohol that prevents good bacteria from growing. From there, our children crave sugar and grains without the nourishment of soluble fiber. I'm going to cover this in a moment. The gut is malnourished, the brain lacks growth signal from the good bacteria in the gut, and the toxin protection of the baby is gone. The baby's brain development is hurt in the crucial years. Lower IQ, lower EQ, learning disorders, attention deficits, and also autism. The next section, bringing back the good microbiome. We want to give the good microbiome the food they like and the yeast doesn't like. You know what it is? What does the good microbiome loves to eat? Soluble fiber. The best soluble fiber comes from the cruciferous family, the cabbage family. Broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, bok choy, Brussels sprouts, collard, watercress, radishes, and the rest of them. Low on sugar and high on soluble fiber, which means these foods give the good bacteria a big, huge advantage in the musical chairs in the gut. This is why traditional fermented vegetables, for example sauerkraut, which was very common in Europe, are based on these specific veggies. This is what the good bacteria like to eat. What about fiber in whole grains? Despite its good marketing, this fiber is insoluble and won't feed the good microbiome. But its carb content will feed the yeast and the bed bugs, so this food won't help the cause. Soluble fiber, though, is not enough. We also must bring back the good bacteria. We must reintroduce them to the gut. Challenge: no good bacteria in our foods. We no longer eat traditional fermented foods, sauerkraut, genuine yogurt, not commercial yogurt, and kefir, because good bacteria are active they shorten the lives of the foods dramatically. So we have to remove them in our food supply. Also, the healthy soil bacteria are removed too in the distribution of food, because these bacteria used to interact with our ancestors all the time when they touched the ground or ate food that came from the ground. We are not. Our food today is virtually sterile. What about store yogurt? What about commercial yogurt? Our commercial yogurt is processed with weaker and limited strains, designed for longer shelf life, lower cost, and mass production. And it has sugar too, which hurts the competitive advantage of the good bacteria. Real yogurt with active good bacteria lasts for 5 to 6 days from production. That's it. You cannot sell those yogurts at store, and we have to make it at home. What about probiotics supplements? You know, those you buy in the supplement containers. In my 15 years of experience, most people don't benefit from them as much as they believe. First, these supplements require expertise in buying. Most products are not effective. By the way, I do not sell any supplement. The amount in one capsule isn't sufficient to restore the original trillions of numbers of good bacteria in the gut. And third, they definitely don't work if we continue to eat sugars and grains. The good news is there is a simple solution. This following solution is simple and rather cheap, and it solves all the problems. The sugar, the amount, the activity of the bacteria, you get all of them. Homemade fermented foods. These can contain up to 100 times more good bacteria than probiotics capsules. All it takes is the base of the food in the starter. Base, which means milk, vegetables, on which the bacteria will grow, and the starter is the strain of bacteria you add, you introduce into the base. No starter, no good bacteria. We need to have a starter. We need to buy a starter. These are the most effective fermented foods: yogurt, homemade yogurt, kefir, and fermented vegetables. And we can use many types of vegetables as long as they contain soluble fiber. Homemade yogurt requires only 15 minutes of preparation for a week's worth of batches. We can eat again and again and again. And if you want a printed guide from me, I made one for my subscribers. Ask in the comments and I'll reply with the free guide. And if you enjoy this content so far, please subscribe. So what do we do? Let's connect everything together. Let's take every information we had in this presentation and connect it to simple steps. Simple steps and solution for a healthy microbiome. I have to stress, these are not personal advice to you, but what I would do personally with my kid. And whatever you do, it's your responsibility. It's your 100% responsibility. Step 1. I would understand where doctors are coming from when they prescribe probiotics. Unfortunately, medicine has become a legal arena. There is a mixture between helping the patient and protecting the doctor. Besides the medical reasons to prescribe antibiotics, antibiotics give the doctor legal protection. No doctor wants to stand before a jury or a judge and explain why they did not give antibiotics. So in the short term, the doctor rules out a problem that they may be sued for later, with no short-term consequences for the patient because the change in the microbiome doesn't happen immediately. But in the long run, there is a danger to the good microbiome, either of the baby or the mother who will give birth and pass on her microbiome. So doctors have all the reasons to just prescribe antibiotics every time. I don't blame them. Step 2. A considerate antibiotics use. Antibiotics can save the child's life in a critical bacteria's infection. I will consult with the doctor carefully in deciding on taking antibiotics before pregnancy and in the first years of the baby. Now, these are questions I would ask my doctor. Can you be sure 100% it's a bacterial infection? Because many times it's a viral infections and antibiotics are not very effective against viruses. Can we use antibiotics later, effectively, if the situation doesn't improve? I believe that there are times that we can use antibiotics in a later stage when things do not progress as we expect. So can we use the antibiotics later? That's what I would ask the doctor and still be effective. And third, can we do other things to strengthen the immune system? Because remember, the body was evolved to kill those bacteria. And maybe we can strengthen a system that doesn't hurt the good bacteria, which is the immune system. In fact, the immune system work with the bacteria. They work with one another. In many ways, strengthening the immune system and improving the gut bacteria also going to help make our body stronger against bad bacteria and bad infections. Now, I will take responsibility. With all due respect, if my child's brain will be harmed or damaged, my child, my spouse, and I, all of us are going to pay for this for the rest of our lives, not anybody else's. Step 3. Incorporate at least one fermented food. Again, easiest fermented foods for the planning mother and child are homemade yogurt, homemade kefir, and homemade fermented vegetables. For example, sauerkraut, carrots, etc. And to remind you, if you want my free guide, printed guide to prepare homemade yogurt, I made one for my subscribers. So ask in the comments and I will reply with a free guide. Step 4. Replace grains with cruciferous vegetables. These will give an advantage to the good bacteria in the musical chairs. Brussels sprouts, broccoli, white cabbage, red cabbage, cauliflower, kale, and more. All of these are going to help the good bacteria to take a hold on the chair. Any dish is good of these vegetables, fresh, steamed, bakes, soups, any types. It's still going to give your child and the mother a boost of food to the good bacteria. I have to stress that we don't need to be perfectionists. Replace as much as possible. The more you replace grains and sugar with those foods, the more you're going to give energy and food and nourishment to the gut and the good bacteria. And this is relevant both for the planning mother and the kid and the child. Step 5. I would make sure my kid drinks filtered water. You see, our tap water must be chlorinated to protect against infection, and that's good. But then it reaches our home and we drink it as well. And chlorine, the same compound that kills bad bugs, also kills the good bacteria as well. Filtration removes the chlorine from the water. 90% of the water my child drinks should be filtered, including drinks made out of filtered water. I would prepare drinks from this water instead of buying sweet sodas. I would consider natural sweeteners that do not harm the good bacteria and feed the bad germs. For example, the monk fruit and stevia. These would not feed the bad germs and give them advantage in the gut. Step 6. Management after antibiotics use. Let's be realistic. We will take antibiotics from time to time. The musical chairs will become available for intruders. It's a crucial time to act. So what do? This is an important window to 1. Consume fermented vegetables to repopulate the good bacteria. 2. Avoid grains and sugar during antibiotic use and following antibiotic use to not encourage the growth of those yeast to produce alcohol and protect the good bacteria from not being able to grow again. And 3rd, eat cruciferous vegetables instead. Summary of the steps. 1. Considerate antibiotics management. At least one fermented food incorporating the lifestyle of the mother and the child, replacing grains and sugars with cruciferous veggies, and filtering the water before our children drink them. Imagine your child developing to his or her full potential. You give your child all the tools to be the best they can. Allow them succeed at school and later in life. What would be the impact on your child's future? In the Wellness Messiah, we intend to publish more videos about children's health. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, I invite you to come to check out the rest of the Wellness Messiah channel and to subscribe to see more videos like this. Any such video requires a large effort of accurate research and to compile information from our 15 years of metabolic research. We would appreciate donation on Patreon to help with the cost of producing those videos, the link to which you can find in the description. You can support the channel with as little as $1 contribution. However, simply subscribing to our YouTube channel for free is a huge help. And to end this, to give a healthy body and a healthy brain for all children, for our child, is one of the greatest gifts we can give them.